I've spent the last several years scouring the internet for exciting independent and nonprofit publishers in the US and Canada and in the UK and elsewhere. And I have built a personal database of over 300 publishers that publish the kind of books that tend to catch my eye, which tend to be literary fiction, narrative nonfiction, and poetry. And I've only just scratched the surface of the publishers that are out there. And one thing I have noticed over these last several years is that a lot of small publishers have really cool websites. One of my favorite things to do when I find a new publisher and their website is to go to their About page, because indie and nonprofit publishers are often really mission driven, or they publish a very specific kind of set of books. So their About pages can quickly tell you if that publisher is a publisher for you, if they're going to publish the kind of books that you want to read. Often these websites give you the kind of basics of what they publish. Do they publish a specific genre? Are they very regionally focused? Maybe they focus exclusively on fiction or nonfiction or poetry or horror or romance or whatever it is. Translation, just poetry, just sci-fi. Could be a whole range of things that publishers focus on. The About page can also give you a sense of the publisher's personality too. So are they like a really serious literary publisher, or do they have a bit of a sense of humor about themselves, or maybe they're really pushing the envelope and they're more of a rebellious publisher? Some of the best arguments that I've found for reading generally from a wide range of independent publishers come from these About pages about one specific single publisher. And so I've learned a lot about kind of the reasons why it's exciting to read from nonprofit presses and indie presses in general from these About pages. But unless you are like me and you're constantly going to these publishers' websites, and I know some of you are like me and that you do that, but if you're not a writer or you're not in the publishing industry, you're probably, or you're not, obsessed with it like me, you're probably not visiting these publishers' websites at least all that often. So you're not really encountering necessarily their amazing mission statements and kind of what they have to say about themselves as a publisher, because most of us encounter publishers through a particular book. We're interested in a book because of the hype or buzz or press or whatever we're hearing about that specific book. And a lot of times the name of the publisher maybe isn't even mentioned at all. And so we don't always get to see all of these really cool arguments that these publishers put together for themselves for why their books that they publish are exciting and what kind of reader their books are for. So we all want to know, indie publishers, what do you have to say for yourselves? Maybe that is not actually a question that you have been asking, but trust me, you should want to be asking that, and I'm going to give you the answer anyway, even if you're not asking it. So to that end, I want to present to you 8 independent publishers who I think have some of the loudest, boldest, best arguments for why their books are worthy of our attention as readers. And not just why one of their books is worthy of our attention, but why all of their books are worthy of our attention. So I'm going to take you on a little tour through some of these publishers and their websites. And first up, we have Clash Books. Clash Books, right from the get-go on their website, they make the bold claim that we put the lit in literary. And they go on to say, Clash Books is where high and low art meet to make something fresh, new, and exciting. We publish literary fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and literary horror. And they say that their mission is to publish awesome and engaging books that transcend labels and break boundaries. And I think that's something you encounter a lot from these publishers, is that this is where you go to find something fresh, something that isn't really being published by the larger corporate publishers, which are really concerned about selling the most books as possible. So they're a little bit wary to publish something that's like really fresh and different, because it doesn't have a proven track record to sell a lot of books yet. And so I think a lot of these websites you'll see have that perspective, that they're the place you go to get something fresh and new. So Clash Books is located in Troy, New York, and I'm going to scroll through some of their books so you can see their amazing covers and titles. And I've mentioned several in my newsletter as well, and I'll leave a link for that below if you want to sign up for that. It's a monthly newsletter, sometimes twice a month, depending on the number of books that I find, where I share all of the books that have been published the previous month by indie presses that have caught my eye. Next up, we have $2 Radio, and $2 Radio says, our books and films, because they also produce films, our books and films aren't for everyone. The last thing the world needs is an indie press releasing books that could just as easily carry a corporate colophon. How do you say that word? Is it colophon or colophon? I'm not sure. But that's the little like kind of logo-y thing that you see on the spine of the book that indicates the publisher. Our work is for the disillusioned and disaffected, the adventurous and independent spirits who thirst for more, who push boundaries and like to witness others test their limits. We know we're not alone. Let's make some noise. And then they also say, we aim to do this by presenting bold works of literary merit, each book individually and collectively providing a sonic progression that we believe is too loud to ignore. And again, that is another message that you might see come up often from indie presses, that their books are phenomenal individually on their own, but even more powerful when taken together, when you read more than one book from a particular publisher. A lot of times they're in conversation with one another, and it's very cool to experience that. $2 Radio is located in Columbus, Ohio. They're one of my favorites. Again, I love their covers. They're so colorful. I'll scroll through some of their books and titles so you can take a look here. One of my personal favorite books, several of my personal favorite books from them are My Volcano, New Animal, Landscapes, and At the Edge of the Woods. They're really the kind of books that are like not easy to forget. They are very vivid. I feel like I retain a lot of very vivid scenes and characters that live in a really visual way in my mind. All of the $2 Radio books that I've ever read are like that. Next up, we have Split Lip Press. And Split Lip Press is dedicated to publishing boundary-breaking fiction, nonfiction, and hybrid books, lifting the transition boards that prevent fluidity and smashing those we cannot pry up. And here's my favorite part. We want to see the dark and the light side of the moon, or we want to see it obliterated. If your book is a wedge in a crack, Split Lip Press is the hammer helping you to split the wall apart. My favorite book from Split Lip Press is Sister Golden Calf by Colleen Berner. Next up, we have Game Over Books. And they say, founded in 2017, Game Over Books is a small Boston-based press run by nerdy artists. Our mission, print books from diverse voices that push creative writing forward into the next level, capitalized next level, which I love. We want to show people that a 40-page poetry collection about Gerard Way as a queer and trans icon has just as much value and has just as much quality as New York Times bestsellers, if not more. And I'll scroll through their books here also, just a bit. So I want to pause here for a bit of reflection. Already we've seen several of these about sections that contrast, whether overtly or not, indie and nonprofit publishing versus corporate publishing. And I just want to acknowledge that to market themselves like this, that contrast is kind of necessary. So the conglomerate publishers are kind of part of the message. They kind of need that contrast in order to like really make that marketing work. It's part of their defining feature that they aren't owned by a giant multinational conglomeration. They're not a huge corporation that's only focused on the bottom line. And that distinction is useful for nonprofit and indie presses. So the fact that there are conglomeration publishers, huge publishers, is useful as a marketing tool for indie presses. And I just want to like throw that out there and acknowledge that yeah, they use that. They use that to their advantage, as they should. So they kind of is, I don't know if it's like a necessary relationship necessarily. Like, could indie presses exist without the huge corporate publishers? Yes, I'm sure they could, but that is useful. The fact that there are these huge conglomerations is useful for marketing. If an indie press is doing their job of marketing themselves right, then they're using that to their advantage, if that makes sense. So next up, I want to tell you about a press. I'm not telling you about this press. A lot of you know about this press already. Is Tilted Axis Press, which I love their personality, and I love their website. So Tilted Axis Press is an independent publisher of contemporary literature by the global majority, translated into or written in a variety of Englishes. This is an example of a publisher that has a very specific focus, and you can find that by visiting their website. Founded in 2015, our practice is an ongoing exploration into alternatives to the hierarchization of certain languages and forms of translation and the monoculture of globalization. Translating Waters is an editorial vision shaped by the migration of people, language, and ideas. From 2024, conceptual and literal bodies of water will be the framework of our titles. Beginning with the Pacific Seas, our list also covers the Indian Ocean as well as the Black Atlantic and Black Pacific. It's useful to kind of see the changes in direction of their mission. So right here, this is an update for 2024 that their focus is on this, bodies of water. So interesting. Tilted Axis is a UK-based publisher. I'll scroll through their books. They have many award-winning books, often listed for various book prizes. They're really easily identifiable by the Tilted Axis line in a pretty color on their covers. And then we have And Other Stories. And this one makes me giggle every time I read it. I just find it delightful. So they say, we select carefully and hope you will agree that the books are good, make you think, and able to last the test of time. We aim to push people's reading limits and help them discover authors of adventurous and inspiring writing. And we want to open up publishing so that from the outside, it doesn't look like some posh Freemasonry. And that's the part that makes me giggle. For example, as we said in this piece in The Guardian, we think more of the English publishing industry should move out of London, Oxford, and their environs. In 2017, we moved our main office out of the southeast to Sheffield and found such a warm welcome. And this is an example of the kind of publisher I love that is outside. So the equivalent in the US, I think, would be publishers that aren't in New York, or also maybe publishers that aren't in the Bay Area. And I love publishers that are regionally focused or just located outside those major publishing hubs. I think it gives them a very fresh and interesting perspective. And for example, $2 Radio is so engaged in their community in Columbus, Ohio. And there are so many other beautiful examples of publishers like that. And that, again, is something that you can figure out from their website. And it's very cool. Next, we have Noemi Press. And Noemi Press says, Noemi Press strives to introduce voices that might otherwise be marginalized by mainstream presses to a broader audience. Noemi provides writers with support and guidance through extensive editorial collaboration. We have been a historically brown and queer press since our founding in 2002. And then my favorite part of their website, I have a beautiful graphic that shows their values, and there are 4 values listed. The first is daring, creating forward-thinking books that disrupt the status quo. Then nurturing, editorial collaboration that seeks to guide and support authors through the bookmaking process, multi-directional mentorship amongst staff and leadership. And then my 2 favorite, guerrilla, a tactical approach to utilizing limited resources to impact the literary landscape. And finally, extra, rooted in works that have been historically deemed too much, too loud, and too other. And that is the perfect example of the about page of a publisher that just makes me want to get up and cheer. That's why I love to visit their about pages. It seems like such a simple thing, but it gets my blood pumping. And finally, I want to share a publisher I talk about often, Biblioasis. Their about page is pretty simple. They don't have a big explanation of in the same vein of these other publishers I listed. And that's true for a lot of publishers that I didn't put in this video because their about page wasn't mind-blowing. It was pretty to the point. And so Biblioasis, their about page, has a short sentence, and then it has a lot of info about like submitting to them and stuff like that. But they say, Biblioasis is a literary press based in Windsor, Ontario, committed to publishing the best poetry, fiction, and nonfiction in beautifully crafted editions. So pretty straightforward, but I want to point you to something wonderful from Biblioasis. That it's not just the about pages from these publishers that are really cool to explore. Biblioasis has like a newsletter, but it's also like a tiny little booklet that they mail out if you're like, I think if you've maybe bought from their website before, they send you, because I get these little cute little booklets from them called the Bibliofile. And you can find it though also under latest news on their website. And this is an incredible newsletter from the publisher that very often makes just the best arguments for why indie publishing, like what the value is of independent and nonprofit publishing. And a lot of times they highlight other small presses in the Bibliophile and talk about them. They have their authors that have published with Biblioasis write little pieces in here. And it's just very cool. And I think it has helped me, you know, the ones that I've received and read so far has helped me understand especially the small press and independent publishing landscape of Canada specifically. And I love that. And you can read a lot of that online from their website. So I encourage you to go check it out. So here's what I encourage you to do. I already mentioned my monthly or sometimes twice monthly newsletter that I send out that has a big long list of books published by independent publishers and nonprofit presses the previous month that caught my eye. So if you sign up, if you're already signed up for my newsletter, or if you do sign up for my newsletter, just look at that list and pick maybe a book from a publisher that you have wanted to check out or is a name that you don't recognize. And I always include a link to the specific book that I'm talking about, the link is from the publisher itself. So you just click on that link, go visit the publisher and poke around their website and let me know like what you find, and maybe websites of publishers that you love to visit and check out and explore. So if you want to know about indie publishers and university presses, I hope you'll subscribe and join me next time. My name is Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll talk to you later. Bye.